The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat rigid in the human delegation section, her knuckles white as she gripped the armrests of her chair. Around her, representatives from 47 different species filled the towering amphitheater, their alien forms creating a symphony of colors, shapes, and sounds that had once filled her with wonder. Not anymore. The humans continue to poison their own world, hissed Councillor Vextai, his serpentine form coiled behind the speaking podium. His voice carried through the universal translators with barely concealed disgust. They wage wars, destroy ecosystems, and refuse to evolve beyond their primitive instincts. Sarah's jaw tightened. This was the 5th time this month the Zephyrians had brought up Earth's environmental struggles. Never mind that humanity had reduced carbon emissions by 60% in the last decade, or that they'd developed revolutionary clean energy technologies. The Council only saw what they wanted to see. Furthermore, Vextai continued, his forked tongue flicking out between words, their aggression makes them unsuitable for advanced galactic citizenship. They are not ready for the responsibilities we offer. Ambassador Chen rose slowly to her feet. The chamber fell silent, thousands of alien eyes focusing on the lone human figure. At 45, Sarah had spent half her life in diplomatic service, first on Earth, and then here among the stars. She'd believed that humanity could find its place among the galactic community. She'd been wrong. Councillor Vextai, Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. You speak of humanity's aggression, yet your own species conquered 3 star systems before joining this council. You mention our environmental struggles while the Kwarathi delegation sitting to your left strip-mined an entire planet just last year. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Kwarathi delegate, a crystalline being that resembled living diamond, shifted uncomfortably in their seat. The difference, Vextai replied smoothly, is that we have evolved beyond such behaviors. Humans remain trapped in their primitive patterns. Sarah laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise the alien assembly. It wasn't a pleasant laugh. Evolved? She said, stepping into the speaking circle at the chamber's center. 3 days ago, your fleet accidentally destroyed a human research station in the Beta Centauri system. 47 scientists died. Your government called it a navigation error. The chamber erupted in whispers and strange alien sounds of discussion. Vextai's scaled features twisted into what might have been a sneer. Regrettable accidents happen in space. It was no accident, Sarah interrupted, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. We recovered the black box data. Your ships targeted the station deliberately because our researchers were making breakthrough discoveries in quantum mechanics that your people couldn't understand. The accusation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Several delegates rose to their feet, demanding explanations, denying involvement, or calling for evidence. But Sarah wasn't finished. For 20 years, she continued, her voice rising above the chaos. Humanity has tried to prove itself worthy of this council. We've shared our art, our music, our literature. We've contributed scientific discoveries that have benefited dozens of species. We've offered military assistance during the Void Wars, losing thousands of our own to protect worlds we'd never even seen. She turned slowly, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. And how have you repaid us? With condescension, with sabotage, with the constant reminder that we're somehow inferior to species that achieved spaceflight through conquest and exploitation. Councillor Thys, the elderly leader of the council, raised one of her forearms for silence. The insectoid being's compound eyes glittered in the chamber's artificial light. Ambassador Chen, Thys said, her translator rendering her clicks and chirps into measured words. These are serious accusations. Do you have proof of deliberate action against human interests? Sarah reached into her diplomatic pouch and withdrew a small data crystal. She held it up for all to see. This contains communications between 5 council species discussing how to manage the human problem, how to keep us dependent on your technologies while preventing us from advancing too quickly, how to use our own moral codes against us by making us feel guilty for our species' past mistakes. The chamber fell dead silent. Even the ambient hum of the life support system seemed to fade. The Altarians have been blocking our applications for advanced manufacturing licenses, Sarah continued, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. The Procyon have been spreading false intelligence about human aggression to isolate us diplomatically, and the Zephyrians, she pointed directly at Vextai, have been conducting illegal raids on our shipping to steal our quantum research. Vextai's scales flushed deep purple, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. These are lies. Human paranoia and... The proof is all here, Sarah said, holding up the crystal. Encrypted communications, financial records, video evidence, everything. The chamber erupted again, but this time the noise was different. Angry. Fearful. The accused species were demanding to examine the evidence while others called for immediate investigations. Counselor Thys struck her ceremonial gong, a deep resonance that seemed to vibrate through every being in the chamber. Order, she commanded. Ambassador Chen, these accusations require formal investigation until such time. No. The single word cut through everything like a physical force. Sarah stood perfectly still in the center of the chamber. Every alien, eye focused on her. No more investigations. No more committees. No more delays while you decide whether humanity deserves basic respect. She reached up and unpinned the small device from her collar, the universal translator that had allowed her to communicate with the galactic community for 2 decades. She set it carefully on the speaking podium. The human delegation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The silence that followed was absolute. In 20,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever voluntarily left the Council. It was unthinkable. The economic, technological, and social benefits of membership were too valuable to abandon. Ambassador, Thys said, her voice betraying something like panic. You cannot be serious. Without Council membership, humanity will be isolated. Cut off from galactic trade, technology sharing, protection. We'll manage, Sarah said simply. She turned and walked toward the human delegation section, where her small team sat in stunned silence. Get up, she told them quietly. We're leaving. Sarah, whispered Dr. Marcus Webb, the delegation's chief scientist. Are you sure about this? The consequences of staying are worse, she replied. We've tried cooperation. We've tried diplomacy. They don't want partners. They want pets. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, the alien assembly erupted into chaos. Delegates argued, shouted, and demanded explanations. But Sarah Chen didn't look back. She had work to do. 6 months after humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council, the effects were already rippling across known space. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen. The massive battlecruiser, one of 12 new ships in humanity's rapidly expanding fleet, had just returned from the Vegan colonies with a hold full of rare minerals. Ma'am, came a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Captain Elena Vasquez approaching, a tablet in her hand and concern on her weathered face. We've got another diplomatic transmission from the Council. That's the 15th one this week, Ara. Almost smiled. Let me guess, they want to discuss terms for humanity's return to the galactic community? Close. This one's from Counselor Thys herself. She's offering concessions. Reduced membership fees, priority access to certain technologies, guaranteed seats on 3 major committees. Delete it, Sarah said, turning back to the view screen. Same as the others. Captain Vasquez hesitated. Ma'am, with respect, some of these offers are quite generous. The Council's never offered terms like this to any species. Exactly. Sarah's reflection ghosted across the star field in the transparent, aluminum window. They're scared. And they had reason to be. In the 6 months since humanity's withdrawal, things had changed dramatically. Without access to Council-controlled trade routes, humans had been forced to forge their own path through the galaxy. They'd established direct relationships with independent worlds, non-Council species, and even some rogue elements within Council territories. The results had been remarkable. Status report on the mining operations? Sarah asked, settling into a chair near the observation windows. Captain Vasquez consulted her tablet. The asteroid belt operations are exceeding projections by 30%. The new gravity manipulator technology is allowing us to extract materials from previously impossible locations. And the Centauri colonies have struck 3 new rare earth deposits. Sarah nodded. When the Council had cut humanity off from their mineral exchanges, they'd expected Earth to come crawling back within months. Instead, human ingenuity had found ways to extract resources from places other species considered impossible or unprofitable. What about the Tau Ceti incident? Vasquez's expression darkened. Zephyrian raiders hit another independent convoy yesterday. That's the 5th attack this month. They're getting bolder. This was the darker side of humanity's independence. Without Council protection, human ships and colonies had become targets for various hostile species. The Zephyrians, in particular, seemed determined to prove that humans couldn't survive without the Council's umbrella. They were about to learn otherwise. "Captain," Sarah said, standing abruptly, "I want you to personally select a strike team. Our best pilots, our newest ships. It's time we sent a message." "Ma'am?" "The next time Vexti's people attack human civilians, they're going to discover that evolution isn't just about transcending violence. Sometimes it's about applying it, more effectively than anyone else." Before Vasquez could respond, the ship's communication system chimed. Lieutenant Commander Singh's voice echoed through the observation deck. "Ambassador Chen to the bridge. Priority communication from the Luna colonies." Sarah and Vasquez exchanged glances. Communications from Luna were typically routine. The moon-based research facilities rarely dealt with anything urgent enough to interrupt a returning diplomatic mission. They found the bridge buzzing with activity. Officers hunched over their stations, data streams flowing across multiple screens. Commander Singh, a tall Sikh man with intelligent eyes, looked up as they entered. "What's the situation?" Sarah asked. "Ma'am, you need to see this," Singh said, gesturing to the main display. 3 hours ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures in the Outer Veil region. The main screen shifted to display a star map. A cluster of red indicators pulsed ominously near the galaxy's edge. "Those are Council fleet positions," Singh continued. "Nearly 200 ships from 15 different species, all converging on a single location." Sarah frowned. "Military exercise? That's what we thought initially, but then we intercepted." "This," Singh nodded to the communications officer who activated an audio file. Static filled the bridge for a moment, then cleared to reveal panicked alien voices speaking in their native languages. The universal translator kicked in after a few seconds. "Massive breach in the dimensional barrier. Cannot establish communication. Energy. Readings are off the charts. Third Fleet reports complete loss of contact. Whatever's coming through, it's not natural. Emergency session called all species to contribute resources immediately." The transmission cut off abruptly. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. "How long ago was this intercepted?" Sarah asked. 47 minutes, Singh replied. "There's more. Our long-range sensors are detecting gravitational anomalies in the same region. Something big is happening out there." Sarah studied the display, her mind racing. The Outer Veil was a region of space where the galaxy's edge met the vast emptiness between star clusters. It was largely unexplored, considered too dangerous and unprofitable for most species to bother with. "Ma'am," Vasquez said quietly, "if the Council's mobilizing 200 ships for something in the Outer Veil, it's not a normal threat," Sarah finished. "Captain, what's our current status? How quickly can we reach Earth?" "At maximum burn, 8 hours. Do it. And send encrypted messages to all human colonies and outposts. Tell them to go to alert status yellow and prepare for potential hostile contact from unknown sources." As the bridge crew scrambled to carry out her orders, Sarah remained fixed on the display showing the Council fleet positions. Something was coming. Something that had every species in the galaxy terrified enough to put aside their differences and work together. Something they apparently didn't think they could handle alone. "Commander Singh," she said finally, "compile everything we have on the Outer Veil region. I want to know what's out there that could scare the Council this badly." "Already working on it, ma'am." "But Ambassador, If the Council is requesting emergency sessions and fleet mobilizations. What? Singh met her eyes. Maybe they're going to ask for humanity's help. Sarah's laugh was cold and sharp. After 6 months of treating us like pariahs, after refusing to even acknowledge our communications, she shook her head. Commander, the Council made it very clear that humanity isn't advanced enough to handle galactic responsibilities. She turned toward the exit, then paused. Let them handle this one themselves. But even as she said it, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening in the outer veil was going to change everything. The question was whether humanity would face it as part of the galactic community, or as something else entirely. Chapter 3. The Threat Revealed. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in progress for 14 hours. Counselor Thais hadn't left her podium once, her forearms gesticulating frantically as she coordinated the greatest military mobilization in galactic history. The crystalline chamber, usually a place of measured debate and careful diplomacy, now resembled a war room. Fleet Admiral Korth reports the dimensional breach is expanding, announced the Procyon intelligence officer, his fur standing on end, with stress. Current diameter, 3 light years and growing. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. 3 light years. The breach was now larger than most solar systems. What's the status of our deep reconnaissance? Thais asked, her compound eyes focusing on multiple displays simultaneously. Lost contact with the 5th probe 30 minutes ago, replied the Admiral. Same pattern as the others. Approached the breach, transmitted garbled data, then complete silence. Counselor Vextai slithered forward, his usual composure cracked with fear. High Counselor, we cannot continue to send assets into that thing, without understanding what we're facing. Then what do you suggest? Thais snapped, her patience finally wearing thin. The breach grows larger every hour. Whatever's on the other side, it's pressing against our reality like... She was interrupted by a junior aide rushing toward the podium. The young Altarian's crystalline features pulsed with urgency. High Counselor, the aide whispered. We've received a transmission from the human colonies. The chamber fell silent. For 6 months, humanity had refused all Council communications. Their diplomatic silence had been absolute. What do they want? Thais asked. They're offering help, High Counselor. The silence stretched even longer. Then Vextai hissed with contempt. Now they come crawling back. When we face crisis, suddenly the humans want to rejoin the galactic community. Actually, the aide said, consulting his tablet nervously, they're not requesting readmission to the Council. They're offering military assistance as an independent ally. This drew surprised murmurs from across the chamber. Independent military assistance was almost unheard of. Typically, species either belonged to the Council's unified command structure or remained completely separate. What kind of assistance? Thais asked. Before the aide could respond, the chamber's main display activated. The familiar figure of Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared, but she looked different. Gone was the formal diplomatic attire, replaced by a practical military uniform. Her hair was shorter, her expression harder. Counselors, Sarah's voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I understand you're facing a significant threat in the Outer Veil region. Vextai reared up angrily. You abandoned this council. You have no right to... I have every right to protect my species and our allies, Sarah interrupted, her tone cold. The dimensional breach you're dealing with isn't just a council problem. If it continues expanding, it will eventually threaten human space as well. She paused, seeming to look directly at Thais, despite the vast distance between them. We have information about what you're facing. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions, accusations, and demands. But Thais raised all forearms for silence, her political instincts recognizing the importance of what they were hearing. What information? She asked. Sarah's expression became grim. 3 months ago, one of our deep space research stations detected unusual quantum fluctuations in the Outer Veil. We sent a reconnaissance mission to investigate. She gestured off-screen, and the display shifted to show detailed sensor readings and star charts. What we found was preliminary evidence of a dimensional fracture, a crack between our universe and somewhere else. We tried to warn the Council through normal diplomatic channels. We received no such warning, Vextai protested. Sarah's smile was bitter. No, you didn't. Because your diplomatic corps classified all human communications as non-priority and filed them without review. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably, while others began frantically checking their records. The point is, Sarah continued, we've been monitoring this situation longer than anyone, and what we've learned should terrify you. The display changed again, showing what appeared to be sensor data from the breach itself. This isn't a natural phenomenon. Something is causing the dimensional barrier to weaken. Something intelligent. Something that wants to come through. Theiss leaned forward. What do you mean, something intelligent? Our long-range sensors have detected organized energy patterns emanating from the breach. They're not random, they're structured, purposeful. Whatever's on the other side is actively working to widen the gap between dimensions. The implications sank in slowly. The chamber filled with the sound of frightened whispers in dozens of alien languages. Furthermore, Sarah added, our quantum mathematicians have run projections on the breach's expansion rate. At current growth patterns, it will reach the nearest inhabited system in 43 days. 43 days? Theiss repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The Kepler colony, Sarah confirmed. 17 million Altarian civilians. The Altarian delegation erupted in panic. Their homeworld was one thing, but Kepler was their largest colonial population, the future of their species. What are you proposing? Theiss asked, fighting to maintain control of the situation. A joint operation, Sarah replied. Human ships working alongside Council forces. We combine our respective technologies and knowledge to address this threat. And what do you want in return? Vextai demanded suspiciously. Sarah's expression hardened. Nothing. This isn't about politics or diplomacy, this is about survival. If this threat breaks through into our dimension, it won't matter who belongs to what political organization. She paused, letting that sink in. But I want to be clear about something. This is a one-time offer of military cooperation. We're not asking to rejoin the Council, and we're not accepting Council authority over human forces. We work together as equals, or not at all. The chamber buzzed with debate. Some delegates were clearly desperate enough to accept any help, while others bristled at the idea of treating humans as equals after months of dismissing them as inferior. What capabilities are you offering? Asked Admiral Korth, the military practicalities overriding political concerns. 12 heavy battle cruisers, 47 destroyer-class vessels, and 8 specialized research ships equipped with our latest quantum manipulation technology, Sarah replied promptly, plus approximately 15,000 military personnel and our most advanced weapons systems. The numbers drew surprised reactions. In 6 months, humanity had built a formidable military force. Our intelligence suggests, Sarah continued, that conventional weapons will be ineffective against whatever's coming through the breach. The energy signatures we're detecting don't match anything in known physics. We'll need to develop entirely new approaches. And you believe you can do this? Theiss asked. Sarah's smile was sharp and predatory. Counselor, you've spent 20 years telling us that humans are too primitive, too aggressive, too stuck in outdated thinking patterns to contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization. She leaned forward slightly. You're about to discover that sometimes primitive aggression and outdated thinking are exactly what you need. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Finally, Vextai spoke. It's a trap. They're using this crisis to force their way back into Council affairs. With respect, Admiral Korth interjected. We've lost 19 ships in the last week trying to contain this breach. If the humans have technology or knowledge that can help. They abandoned us, Vextai hissed, left us to face the galaxy's challenges alone. Now they return only when it benefits them. This studied the data displays, her compound eyes tracking multiple information streams simultaneously. As the ALS chamber erupted in debate around her, she made the calculations that had kept her in power for 3 centuries. The breach was expanding faster than their projections suggested. Their conventional approaches had failed completely, and in 43 days, 17 million civilians would die if they couldn't solve this problem. Politics and pride were luxuries they could no longer afford. "Admiral Korth," she said, her voice cutting through the arguments, "send a response to the humans. Tell them their offer is accepted." The chamber fell silent. "High Counselor," Vextai began, "surely we should discuss—" "There's nothing to discuss," Thais replied firmly. "In 43 days this breach will consume an entire star system. If the humans can help prevent that, then we'll work with them." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of dozens of delegates. "And if working with them requires treating them as equals—" She paused significantly. "Then perhaps it's time we acknowledged that our assessment of human capabilities was incomplete." As the chamber erupted in fresh debates, Thais privately wondered if they were about to discover that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their willingness to fight impossible battles against overwhelming odds. They were about to need that more than they knew. Chapter 4. The Battle for Reality. The combined fleet hung in space like a constellation of deadly stars. 317 ships from 18 different species, representing the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. At the formation's heart, the human battlecruiser Defiance maintained position alongside the Council flagship Eternal Vigilance, their crews working together despite centuries of mutual suspicion. Admiral Sarah Chen, she'd accepted the joint command rank for the duration of the crisis, stood on the Defiance's bridge, watching the tactical displays that showed their target. The dimensional breach had grown to nearly 4 light-years in diameter, its edges crackling with energies that shouldn't exist in normal space. "Final sensor sweep complete," reported Commander Singh from his station. "The breach isn't just expanding, it's solidifying. Whatever's on the other side is stabilizing the connection." "Time estimate until breakthrough?" Sarah asked. "Based on current progression." 18 hours. The bridge fell silent. 18 hours until something from another dimension entered their universe. Every probe sent into the breach had been destroyed or corrupted, their final transmissions filled with impossible images and sounds that drove computer systems into cascading failures. "Admiral," came a voice from the communication station. "Council Command is requesting conference." The main display activated, showing the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance. High Admiral This Ka, the Galactic Council's supreme military commander, appeared alongside Counselor This. The elderly insectoid looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Admiral Chen," This Ka began, "our final probe has returned with disturbing data." "Show me." The display shifted to sensor readings that made Sarah's blood run cold. The probe had detected massive structures inside the breach. Ships, if they could be called that. But these vessels defied every principle of known engineering. They seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their forms shifting and changing in ways that hurt to observe directly. "How many?" Sarah asked quietly. "Our best estimate." Thaiska paused, her compound eyes reflecting the data screens. "Several thousand ships, each one approximately the size of a battle station." The implications were staggering. A fleet of dimensional warships, each one larger than anything in known space, preparing to invade their universe. "There's more," This added grimly. "The probe detected communication signals from the ships. Our linguists have been analyzing them." The display changed again, showing waveform patterns that resembled language but seemed to twist through mathematical impossibilities. "We can't translate the meaning, but we can determine the intent. They're not explorers, Admiral Chen. They're conquerors. And they're specifically targeting population centers, planets with high concentrations of intelligent life." Sarah closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, her expression was diamond hard. "Recommendations, High Admiral?" "Conventional tactics are useless," This Ka replied. "These ships exist partially outside our dimensional framework. Energy weapons pass through them, kinetic weapons have reduced effectiveness, and their ability to manipulate space-time Gives them tactical advantages we can't counter. So what are you suggesting? The two council leaders exchanged glances. Finally, Thys spoke. Your people have been developing quantum manipulation technology for 6 months. Weapons and systems that operate on subatomic levels, affecting the fundamental structure of reality itself. Sarah nodded slowly. You want us to weaponize quantum mechanics against extra-dimensional invaders. Is it possible? In theory, yes. If we can destabilize their dimensional anchor points, we might be able to force them back to their own reality. But the power requirements would be enormous, and the risks... What risks? Thys demanded. Sarah looked directly at the camera. If we miscalculate, we could accidentally expand the breach instead of closing it. Or worse, we could tear open additional rifts in spacetime. The silence stretched between the two bridges. Finally, Thys spoke. What do you need? Full access to your dimensional research archives, complete technical schematics for every ship in the fleet, and authorization to modify our quantum cannon systems for maximum output. Granted. What else? Sarah's expression became grim. Volunteers. What I'm planning will require ships to get close to the breach, close enough that they might not make it back. How close? Inside the dimensional distortion field. The alien commanders were quiet for a long moment. Ships entering the distortion field would be exposed to energies that could tear apart molecular bonds or age crews to death in seconds. I'll lead the assault myself, Sarah said simply. Admiral, Commander Singh interrupted from his station. Incoming transmission from the breach. It's in English. Every human on the bridge froze. The invaders were speaking their language. On screen. The display flickered, then cleared to show something that wasn't quite a face. The being, if it could be called that, seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its features shifting and changing like liquid reality. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that shouldn't be possible. Humans of this dimension, it said, the words carrying undertones that made the bridge crew physically uncomfortable. We have observed your species across the dimensional barriers. You interest us. Sarah stepped forward. I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding the human fleet. What do you want? Your cooperation, the entity replied. Your species possesses qualities we require. Aggression, adaptability, the willingness to survive at any cost. And if we refuse? The thing that might have been a smile crossed the entity's shifting features. We will take what we need. Your dimension contains billions of intelligent minds. We require only a few million humans. The rest of your galaxy's inhabitants are expendable. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. They want to harvest humanity, Singh said quietly. Not if I can help it, Sarah replied grimly. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Execute quantum modification protocols immediately. We have 16 hours to save our universe. Over the next several hours, the combined fleet transformed itself into something unprecedented. Human quantum manipulation technology merged with Council defensive systems, creating weapons that could theoretically affect the fundamental structure of reality itself. But as the dimensional breach continued to expand, and the first enemy ships began emerging into normal space, Sarah realized they were facing something beyond conventional warfare. They were fighting for the right of their universe to exist. All ships, she announced as the alien fleet began pouring through the breach. This is not a battle for territory or resources. This is a battle for reality itself. The first quantum torpedoes launched, their warheads designed to collapse dimensional barriers. The enemy ships shimmered and twisted, some of them flickering back into their home dimension, but more kept coming. Admiral, Singh reported, we're having an effect, but there are too many of them. We need to collapse the breach itself. Sarah nodded grimly. Prepare the Defiance for dimensional penetration. We're going into the breach. Ma'am, the hull won't survive more than a few minutes in that environment. It doesn't need to survive. It just needs to get us close enough to deploy the quantum resonance bomb. The bridge crew worked in desperate silence as the Defiance detached from the main fleet and began accelerating toward the dimensional rift. Around them, the battle for reality itself raged across space. As they approached the breach, Sarah activated one final transmission to the fleet. "This is Admiral Chen. If we don't make it back, tell them that humanity went down fighting." The Defiance disappeared into the dimensional storm, carrying with it the hopes of an entire universe. And in the depths of the breach, surrounded by impossible geometries and alien realities, Sarah Chen prepared to discover whether human stubbornness could triumph over cosmic horror. The fate of everything depended on it. Epilogue. The New Alliance. 6 months after the Battle of the Outer Veil, the galaxy was still coming to terms with what had happened. The dimensional breach was gone, collapsed by the sacrifice of 17 ships and their crews who had entered the rift to deploy quantum resonance bombs. The invading force had been pushed back to their own reality, but not before the galaxy learned a sobering truth. They were not alone in the cosmos, and not everything out there was friendly. Ambassador Sarah Chen, she'd returned to diplomatic rank after the crisis, sat in her office aboard the orbital station New Horizon, humanity's new embassy to the galactic community. Through the massive viewports, she could see ships from dozens of species docked at the station's ports. The sight still amazed her. "The Council's response to our latest proposal?" she asked Dr. Marcus Webb, who had become her chief diplomatic advisor. "Unanimous approval," Marcus replied, setting a data pad on her desk. "The Mutual Defense Treaty has been ratified by all 47 member species plus the 8 independent systems we've allied with." Sarah nodded, reviewing the document. The treaty established humanity as an equal partner in galactic defense, with human military commanders holding senior positions in the new Dimensional Security Force. It was everything she'd fought for 2 years ago and more. "Any word from the deep space monitoring stations?" she asked. "All quiet on the dimensional front," Marcus reported. "But the quantum detection network is picking up anomalous readings from 3 other sectors. It seems our uninvited guests weren't the only things out there watching us." Sarah frowned. "More dimensional incursions?" "Possibly. Or maybe word is spreading that this dimension successfully repelled an invasion. That could draw attention from entities we'd rather not meet." Before Sarah could respond, her communication system chimed. "Ambassador, you have a visitor. Counselor Thiss is requesting a meeting. Send her in." The elderly insectoid entered the office, moving with the careful dignity that had made her the galaxy's most respected political leader. But Sarah noticed something different in her bearing, a deference that hadn't been there before. "Counselor," Sarah said, rising from her chair, "please sit." Thiss settled into one of the specially designed chairs, her compound eyes focusing on Sarah with what might have been amusement. "You've grown accustomed to the diplomatic niceties," Thiss observed. 2 years ago you stormed out of the council chamber like an angry warrior." 2 years ago I was angry," Sarah replied. "Now I'm just tired. The galaxy owes you a debt, Ambassador Chen. Without human intervention, the dimensional invasion would have succeeded." Sarah moved to the viewport, watching a human patrol ship dock alongside a Zephyrian medical transport. "We all fought together, Counselor. That's what mattered." "Yes," Thiss agreed, "but it was human technology that closed the breach. Human tactics that allowed us to survive the battle. And human sacrifice that saved 17 million Altarian civilians on Kepler colony." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "The Council has made mistakes in its assessment of humanity. We saw your species' capacity for violence and failed to recognize it as a strength. We observed your environmental struggles and ignored your achievements. We judged you by our own standards instead of understanding what made you unique." Sarah turned back to face the counselor. "And what makes us unique, in your opinion?" "Your refusal to accept defeat," Thiss replied immediately. "Every other species in the galaxy, when faced with impossible odds, looks for diplomatic solutions or retreats to defensible positions. Humans look for ways to fight. That's not always a good thing." "No," Thiss agreed, "but sometimes it's exactly what the universe needs." She rose from her chair, moving to stand beside Sarah at the viewport. "There's something else," Thiss said quietly. Something the council wanted me to discuss with you personally. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Official business? In a way. This gestured toward the ships visible through the viewport. The dimensional invasion changed more than our military strategies. It changed how we think about galactic governance. How so? For 20,000 years, the Council has operated on the principle that advanced civilizations naturally evolve beyond primitive behaviors like aggression and territorial competition. We believed that true sophistication meant transcending such base instincts. Theis's compound eyes reflected the starlight streaming through the viewport. The dimensional entities proved us wrong. They were advanced beyond our comprehension, yet they were purely predatory. They had transcended physical limitations but retained the fundamental drive to dominate and consume. Sarah began to see where this was heading. You're reconsidering your evolutionary philosophy. More than that, we're reconsidering the entire structure of galactic civilization. Theis turned to face Sarah directly. The Council wants to offer humanity something that's never been offered to any species in galactic history. Which is? Co-leadership of the Galactic Council, equal authority with the existing High Council, with human representatives holding permanent positions in all major decisions. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Co-leadership would mean humanity wouldn't just be members of the galactic community, they'd be helping to guide its future. What's the catch? She asked finally. Theis's mandibles clicked, and what Sarah had learned was the equivalent of a rueful smile. Your people have an saying about gifts and horses' mouths, don't they? We do. But we also have a saying about things that seem too good to be true. Fair enough. Theis moved back to her chair. The reality is that the galaxy needs what humanity brings to it. Your people think differently than we do. When we see problems, we form committees and seek consensus. When you see problems, you find ways to solve them, even if the solutions are messy. Especially if the solutions are messy, Theis agreed. The dimensional invasion taught us that the universe doesn't care about our philosophical preferences. It doesn't matter how enlightened we think we are if we can't defend ourselves when something tries to destroy us. Sarah returned to her desk, considering the offer. What would human co-leadership mean in practical terms? Human military doctrine would become standard for the dimensional security force. Human exploration protocols would guide our expansion into uncharted regions. And human representatives would have equal votes on all council decisions, including the authority to override traditional consensus building in crisis situations. It was an extraordinary offer, the kind of recognition and authority that humanity had never dared to hope for. There's something else you should know, Theis continued. The offer isn't just coming from the council leadership. It's been endorsed by every species that fought in the dimensional battle. Even Councillor Vextai has signed the proposal. That surprised Sarah. The Zephyrian leader had been humanity's most vocal critic. Vextai's change of heart seems sudden. His ship was caught in a dimensional storm during the battle, Theis explained. Human rescue teams saved his crew when his own people assumed they were lost. It's hard to maintain old prejudices when someone risks their life to save yours. Sarah nodded slowly. The battle had changed many perspectives. I'll need to consult with Earth's government, she said finally. This isn't a decision I can make alone. Of course, but Ambassador... Theis paused at the office door. Don't take too long. The quantum monitoring network is detecting more dimensional anomalies every week. Whatever drove those entities to invade our universe, it's still out there. And there may be others. After Theis left, Sarah stood alone in her office watching the mixed fleet of human and alien ships moving through space around the station. 2 years ago, she'd walked out of the council chamber in anger and frustration. Now she was being offered a chance to help shape the future of galactic civilization. Her communication system chimed again. Ambassador, incoming priority transmission. From Earth. Put it through. The display activated, showing President Martinez in the Oval Office. Behind him, Sarah could see the familiar blue and green curve of Earth through the windows. Sarah, the president said, I've been briefing the Security Council on the latest dimensional security reports. How bad is it out there? Bad enough. That the Council is offering us co-leadership of galactic civilization, Sarah replied. The president's eyebrows rose. That's unexpected. What's your assessment? Sarah considered her words carefully. Mr. President, 6 months ago, we were pariahs in the galactic community. Today we're being offered equal authority over 47 species and 800 billion sentient beings. Because we saved them. Because we proved that sometimes the galaxy needs fighters more than philosophers, Sarah corrected. The question is whether we're ready for that responsibility. President Martinez was quiet for a moment. What do you think, Sarah? You've spent more time dealing with these aliens than anyone else in human history. Sarah looked out at the mixed fleet, again, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The frustration, the anger, the desperate battle against impossible odds, and the fragile trust that had emerged from shared sacrifice. I think, she said finally, that we've spent so long trying to prove we deserve a place at the table that we forgot to ask whether the table was worth sitting at. And now we have a chance to rebuild the table entirely, to create something that values both wisdom and strength, diplomacy and determination. She turned back to the camera. Mr. President, I recommend we accept their offer. With conditions, Sarah smiled. Always with conditions. We'll work with them as equals, but we won't let them change us into something we're not. Humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization isn't our technology or our military tactics. What is it? Our refusal to give up when things get impossible. As the transmission ended, Sarah returned to the viewport. A new group of ships was approaching the station. Young species making first contact with the galactic community, guided by the same hopes and fears that had driven humanity to the stars. She thought about the dimensional entities still lurking, in the spaces between realities, about the unknown threats that might be watching their universe, and about the delicate balance between civilization and survival that every intelligent species had to navigate. The galaxy was a dangerous place, but for the first time in human history they wouldn't be facing those dangers alone, and maybe, just maybe, they could build something better than what had come before. Outside the station, human and alien ships moved through the void together, their running lights creating new constellations against the ancient stars. It wasn't the galaxy that humanity had expected to find when they first reached for the stars. It was better. The end